I've been holding on long enough, and finally we're going to take a look at my top 100 games. Hi, I'm Will. This is Copper Met. This is a channel where we like to play solo board games, do reviews. Sometimes we have guests on to do playthroughs and discussions. And, just share the love of board gaming with the community and with the world. And I really do feel this is a hobby that everyone can enjoy in some form or another. And it has been quite a few years I've been in this hobby. I've only been kind of officially tracking my gameplays for the last 3 or 4 years, but I've been actively in the community in 3 or 4 years before that. I ran a board game meetup twice a week for about 4 years before COVID. And so I've played just a ton of games, and I thought I would share with you, my top 100 games. I've never made a list this large, or even covered my favorite games. And I know some people have been asking, so I think it's time to finally, I buckled down, I made my list, and of course, I'm sure this list is going to change. Probably by the time these videos are all out, it may have changed slightly. It's just the nature of the hobby. You're constantly playing new games, new stuff's coming out. You're playing things, you're maybe getting tired of older games. So there will be some flux. I probably won't do this list every year. Maybe we'll do a smaller list every year. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the top 100. We're going to break it down in groups of 10s. And then the final top 20 to 10 and 10 to 1, I'm going to have Ferran and Nabil and John join me on the channel here, and we're all going to go over our top 20 board games of all time, our favorites of all time, right? These are very subjective lists, of course, and definitely my list is not going to be the same as yours, and it's not going to be the same as any of my typical gaming buddies who you see here on the channel. So take that with a grain of salt. Just because a game back here or around my room here does not show up on the list doesn't mean that I don't like the game. These are all games that I know and love just so much. And of course, there's games that maybe I just haven't played enough to warrant being on my list. Games that are relatively new to me, and I just haven't put the time into it needed to really place it in a way in my list that I'm comfortable with it. Because I don't want to just add in a game I've played once or twice. I want to put it through its paces and try different player accounts and solo and stuff like that and see what I think. So we are going to go ahead and dive in. If at any point you think or you would like to ask me to do a playthrough of one of these games, just put it in the comments below, and I'll try to do a video featuring it when I get around to it. A lot of these games do have solo modes, not all of them, of course. I do play a lot of games on my own, but I also play with my family or friends with board game groups. Occasional smaller conventions in the area. And so we're going to do 10 to 91 right now. All right, my first are around my 100th. And again, there's so many games that just didn't quite make the list that I love, but these are the ones that ended up on it. So my number 100, favorite game of all time is Port Royal. This is the Alexander Pfister small box push your luck card game. I've had great success playing this with new players, and it's short, it's punchy. Every time it hits the table, it's always fun for everybody. When it's your turn, you are flipping over cards and adding them to the market, but you decide when you want to stop adding cards. Because if you add 2 ships of the same color, you bust. And then, assuming you haven't busted, other players will pay you money for a chance to get things from the market. There's a little bit of tableau building, and it's just a quick race to 12 points, I believe. So lots of fun, very, very quick game in a pretty small package. And of course, the big box, new version, just has everything in it, and it's highly recommended. On to my number 99, and this is Brew. And this is a dice placement game. Each player is rolling their handful of dice at the start of the round. They have dice of their own colors and dice of a neutral color. And then they're placing them on matching spots on these cards that make out a little, like a map. And as you place them on the cards, you will, if they match, you activate them to get some resources. You can spend those resources to get potions that will allow you to manipulate dice. There is also creatures you can collect that give you kind of upgrades. And in the end, you are working on sort of an area control for each of these individual cards. Because if you have majority of your dice in the card, you win that card. It's worth points. And you are trying to, of course, have the most number of points in the game. There's a couple of things that really spice up this game. And it is the rounds alternate. So the board actually flips to the other side when there's different dice placement spots. And also the dice placement itself is just so spicy. You are really tightly, carefully fighting over those things, or trying to adjust turn order a little bit by like delaying a die or recalling a die so you can place it later. It is very impactful where the neutral dice get placed too, because the neutral player could beat you out for winning a location, and you have to be strictly winning in order to get those cards. So a surprisingly mean little game for what a small package it is and how cute it looks, but it's really fun to play. Number 98 is Coup. This is the classic deduction small box card game. There's like 15 cards or something, and this is a game where each card has different action, and although you have 2 cards and nobody knows which cards or which rolls you have, as long as no one calls you on it, then you can do whatever you want. You could say, and a very common thing is saying, I'm the Duke, and take $3. And there's only 3 Duke cards in the game, but, not all 5 of you can be the Duke at the same time, but unless someone calls your bluff, you end up with those ridiculous moments where everyone is a Duke back to back, and maybe someone's trying to assassinate you. If you lose life or you get called out in your bluff, then you have to remove one of your lives or one of your rolls, making it even harder to bluff now. So there is definitely a little bit of ways to deduce or calculate the odds that someone could actually be what they think they're being, and of course, just a little bit of bluffing. It's a good, quick game to play, and this has been a huge success with my scout group that I run. I bring this to every camp, and they just love playing it during their free time. Next, number 97 is Flashpoint Fire Rescue. This is one of my preferred kind of midweight, lightweight cooperative games. If you like games like Pandemic, this is right up your alley. Each player has a character or a firefighter that has some small special ability, and the house or the building is on fire, and the fire is spreading. And boy, is it ever spreading. It's damaging the building itself, and you're trying to bust in and find the civilians that are around the building, and just haul them back out. Well, you could even, one player could drive the ambulance around to get closer to the exits where the people are coming out of. One person can jump into the fire truck and do big splash damage to put out large swaths of fire at once. And of course, it's going to come down to players just going right in with their hoses and just putting out fires to get in and clear people out. This game is a ton of fun. You can really ratchet up difficulty if you want to, with dice that chain essentially off of these small icons, and that allows for more dangerous and more exciting times. This has been a big hit with the family. Number 96 is Tiny Epic Galaxies, and this is even with the Beyond the Black expansion, which adds unique captains and a bit of exploration. This is just a small box game. In fact, they even have the ultra tiny epic version. I just have the standard, but you can get this essentially in a deck of cards size game that has just a ton of punch in it. Each person has their galaxy kind of faction mats that you can upgrade your galaxy in the tech, which gives you more ships and more dice to roll. You can slowly kind of conquer planets either through economic victory or more political victories. In which case, once you gain the planets, now you can have exclusive access to their special abilities. There's a lot of like fighting and racing back and forth for who can conquer planets faster. And this really comes together in a pretty easy to teach, just punchy game with a lot of neat combos and a lot of interesting choices. And of course, there is some random dice rolling, which the dice have the actions on them. But you can mitigate that. You can spend energy for rerolls and such like that. So that works out really well. And that's my number 96. Number 95 is Tiny Towns. This is a puzzle game that plays a large player count, but I would probably suggest not play it with children unless you maybe you're all children or you're all beginners. Just because my experiences with this are the more experienced players will just wallop the younger players, and they will be left essentially out of the game while you're still taking turns. It's one of those games where you're trying to maximize the amount you can build in a very small space. A cube comes out. If you're playing the standard version, each player takes a turn deciding what color cube that everybody gets. You place it on your board, and if you have the right little pattern that matches the building type that you want, you remove those cubes and you place the building in one of those spots. However, that spot where the building is now blocked. So your board is slowly shrinking. You're getting less and less space to try to fit these buildings in. And of course, they're scoring based on different buildings score differently. It could be adjacencies or how many you have, or in different parts of the board and things like that. So it is a very tight puzzle, works very well solo, lovely components, and there's a ton of variety. The expansions just add even more variety, although I don't think they're necessary. And it's just a ton of fun to play solo or otherwise. 94 is Warp's Edge. This is a bag building, kind of push your luck space fighting game. So if you picture something like Galaga, you see, 3 fighters and a mothership, and you are pulling chips from a bag and trying to dispose or neutralize these ships to get to the mothership and then fight the mothership. And there is just so much content in this box, especially with the expansions. They have multiple player ships to use. They each have different superpowers, as well as they just build differently. They have different things, starting things. They have different amounts of shields. They have different abilities. And then throughout the game, you also gain these additional other ability cards that you can spend energy on getting. And then you're like a bag building or deck building type game. You are upgrading your bag of chips. You're buying new ones from the row based on how much energy and stuff you have, and you're replacing old ones, and so that your draws are getting better and better. And you are essentially trying to fight your way through these ships, and of course stay alive. And if you are able to do that, then of course you can confront the mothership. Depending on the rules, some motherships let you fight them earlier or later. But then there's kind of like a rewind mechanic. So you're kind of racing. This is where the warp comes in. You're kind of racing through, trying to get as far as you can, and you get wiped out, pretty early on. And then you rewind, but your bag stays the same. And then you get a little farther, and you've gone halfway through the bad guys, and then you wipe out, and then time rewinds. And if you're able to get far enough to beat the boss before you run out of redos, then you win the game. And so each redo, since you're keeping the bag, you're getting stronger, you're doing more, and you're learning a little bit more about what enemies await you and about how to defeat the boss. There's just a ton of variety here. It's a lot of fun. And of course, this is a solo-only board game, though. Number 93 is Shards of Infinity. This has replaced Star Realms and Dominion for me as my kind of go-to quick deck building card game. I do like the extra aspect of gaining not shards, but gaining the strength or the power throughout the game. So not only are you just dealing with healing yourself and whacking the enemy, kind of like in Star Realms, but you are also slowly raising the bar on this other special power. And what that allows you to do is certain cards will trigger off of it if you've reached certain powers, as well as if you can max out at 20 before, your opponent kills you, then, and you get your Infinity Reactor card, it does basically infinite damage and you've won the game. So it allows for multiple avenues of victory. There are 4 factions that trigger off each other in different ways. Some allow for more card milling, some allow for more healing, or card draw. And there's just some really neat, tight deck building for a head-to-head experience. Also, there are expansions that add a cooperative element to it, where you are fighting against a boss. And the bosses are very interesting, very well done. They kind of mash up a couple different enemy decks together, and you're fighting off against them. They all have unique feels to them. So that works really well, and it's a really solid deck builder, even just the base game. All right, number 92 is Love Letter. Now, you could take probably any love letter and fit in here, and I have played several of them. With some of the weirdest ones being things like Cthulhu, Love Letter, or the Marvel Love Letter is the one with Thanos is one of the characters and everyone else is fighting against them. But I'm just, without, cheating and having multiples, I'm just going to say the original Love Letter. The original, for only, I think, 16 cards, it is just a tight game with a good amount of actual deduction, where you can really see or get a good feel for what other people might have and be able to get them out, and there's lots of room for clever plays. I've seen it come down to the very last card where there might be a guess, and it comes down to 50-50, whether they have the card that they have in their hand or the one that's been removed from the round randomly, and then beginnings like that, or it's came down to the end where the princess is won because she's the strongest value remaining. It's fast and fast enough that we usually don't even keep score. We just keep playing until we're bored. It's not a great one to bring with you because it's so small, and it's easy to teach for new players. And like I said, once people, if people haven't played this sort of game before, once you see the gears kind of click in their mind and they start realizing, oh, okay, if those two are out and this one's out, then you probably have this kind of card here, or you can see those things clicking, and it's just excellent every time I play it. And then my number 91, this is in the same series as Warp's Edge, and that is the newer game Wreckland Run. This has, again, just so much solo content in the box. If you want to feel like Mad Max, where you're just, barreling through the desert with enemies coming at you on all sides, this is the game that's going to do that for you in a small box. And you are rolling dice and then allotting the dice to placements around your board to both activate weapons and things, but the dice also activate enemies, and there's a certain decent amount of puzzly aspects, because you can't just, activate something to shoot an enemy and they're gone. You may need to, funnel enemies around. There's a certain amount of moving them around the boards in order to kind of mass attack them all at once, or do different things like that. The box has several different vehicles to choose from that you're racing. But there's also basically a campaign setup in there too, where you're playing through, I think, 10 or so missions of progressing difficulty that also add more content into your game while you play too. So it brings even more variety. It can be nail biting. It's a lot of fun, and you feel like you're just blowing enemies off left and right while you're, like I said, racing through a desert. It's just a ton of fun. So that is my 100 to 91. Tune in next time, and I'll do my next 90 date to 81. We, like I said, are eventually going to end this with some guests for the top 20. I hope that these games have either given you some recommendations of what you might enjoy, but that you also love these games too. They are some of my top 100 favorite games. If you don't like them, that's fine too. You know, everyone has their own opinions. And I'm just excited to be able to share, you know, my love of the hobby with everyone who's willing to hear me. So thanks again for watching. I'm Will, and this is Carper Matt.